Greetings. This is Charlie, and I'm making this video to share with you a little bit about my history so you might have a sense of what I have done and experienced in life. Hopefully, this will help to uh, maybe give a little bit of more weight and credibility. I guess that's what it comes down to. So let me just say that I have lived in several different countries. I came from the Northeast. My family was a single mom, and it was kind of an atheist family, or I would say maybe non religious. We didn't have any talk about spiritual things or religious life, or God or any of that. Um, I would say we were raised, me and my brothers, as maybe third generation atheists. I think my mom's parents were Quakers, so they were already sort of departing from the formal religious setting. And my mother's parents were, I would say, uh, nominally um, atheistic, and but very conscientious and very with great admiration for um, good conscientious people, and a great admiration of nature, and they were known as to be very kind people. um, so I grew up thinking that maybe 10% of the American public was religious. I was raised to think that religion was for the maybe uneducated, or kind of people who were um, didn't really have a problem with believing in mythologies, I guess you could say. Which is interesting because now I'm married to a Russian woman who was raised in the same way in her country, where um, there is no God. This was taught in schools from primary school level. There is no God. Religion is a fantasy. But we just keep the churches open for the old people because they're too old to change. Um, my wife remembers being told to take off her cross in elementary school. Didn't you know God doesn't really exist? That's just a story. Um, this was typical of the communist world, as far as I know. I did live over there in my later life for about a year. Um, so I have come to tune in to what the communist experience was like. We have a lot of friends who were Russian or Eastern European. So yeah, just a quick biography. So I had a what I would call like a spiritual awakening, which was not involving any group or any church, but was just a spontaneous awakening where I became sensitive to the spiritual world, in the sense that I heard and saw things that were not in the physical dimension. And I started to dream also about the spiritual world. Um, and then once I knew that the spiritual world existed, I, as anyone who has felt it or seen it before, you become aware that it is extremely important. It's not just a parlor trick or some passing thing. It deeply impacts your view on reality. As many people would tell you, if you haven't had that kind of experience, but you may have heard that once you see the spiritual world, the physical world and all of the things that are available to your five senses, including, what's on the TV and what your parents taught you or told you, or all the experiences you had in school, all of these things that were mapping out in time and space in front of your physical senses. um, you come to realize that that world is kind of more of a shadow world, in the sense that you can't see people's intentions, and you can't see the um, evidence of their feelings and thoughts. Whereas in the spiritual world, you can see very clearly and plainly a person's state of mind. You can see that the whole reality around a situation, shows the situation that's going on, in terms of feelings of love, or feelings of anger, or feelings of regret or sadness, or fear. It's In the spiritual world, those things are plainly clear. And I guess if I could put it in a word, the main shift for me was realizing that the human mind, which is a spiritual instrument or entity, is the primary function of the human being, rather than their biochemistry and their physiology. So the world of the mind is causal, and the world of the body is resultant. So once you see this, and you can't really unsee it, um, then you look at everything differently. You look at medicine differently. You look at history differently, religion differently, politics differently, relationships, love, sexuality, all of it has a different dimension to it. And it's not that you need to be able to see the spirit world to know these things. I think people can intuit the truth. If you have a religious education, you're kind of educated that way, I guess, anyway, right? That the world of the spirit is more consequential than the world of the physical. Um, or if you study deep psychology, you know that the mind is the cause of so many physical health or disorders. So it's not a great mystery, except that for me, as a 16-year-old, I had kind of mapped out what I wanted to do. I was really interested in biology and chemistry, and I was looking forward to studying that in college. But after this experience, I realized that there was another world that was far more important than the physical one. Um, they're both important. It's not to say to disregard the physical world, but um, I just I felt that I should learn about what everybody had said up until this point. So I began right away studying. After I left high school, I went to college. Took a year in Paris. Kind of early. I left high school a year early, and I started school a year early. So I was 16 when I first went abroad in college, and I studied at the American University there, and I studied philosophy and literature, but more philosophy. So I got a kind of started with like a history of Western philosophy, and then through that year, I started to also be interested on the side in spiritual teachings. I began to study a little bit of anthroposophy, which my grandfather on my father's side was very interested in and had a lot of books in. Anthroposophy is a mid 20th century, late 19th century teaching, coming from Theosophy, which was started by Madame Blavatsky in Russia. She was a Russian mystic. And the main, I would say, theme of those teachings was that that we are in a kind of pivoting age, just like the age of Jesus was a pivoting age, and this is a new pivoting age. And in this pivoting age, the spirituality of the East and the West would come united, and science and religion would come united, and humanity would reach a kind of an apex of unity and of enlightenment and love. And there are many the anthroposophical schools, like the Waldorf schools, are coming from that teaching, and Rudolf Steiner. Um, so I started to really sink my interest into the new religions, like um, uh, well, I won't list them now, but religions that mainly had the sense that the old Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism were needing an update. They were not um, scientifically based enough. They were not logical enough for modern people. So just started studying. I started working in like New Age type bookstores, but they're not just crystals and channeling. It's a lot of there's a lot of serious work in the can be found in those bookstores, and I just started reading that stuff on my own. And then I came back to the Amherst college area, and I took classes at Amherst College with Robert Thurman, who was the first American disciple of the Dalai Lama. He's currently the chair of Columbia's religion department. He was consequently Uma Thurman's dad. Kind of funny thing. But I took a couple classes with him. I got kind of basics of Buddhism, and then I studied also with uh, a student of Joseph Campbell, who talks about his big book was The Power of Myth. And these are this type of teacher, like Joseph Campbell or Rudolf Steiner, and many others. Their main theme is that humanity is on a common track, headed towards a common destination, and they're very much embracing of the physical world. They're not people who think that the physical world is to be discarded, and that the purpose of life lies beyond in some other world. They're very practical, earthly type people. They're interested in human psychology. They're interested in medicine. They're interested in health, health of the mind and the body, not just the spirit. So I very much come from that tradition. Then when I finished college, I studied also with Richard Rubenstein, who is kind of um, a primary uh, scholar of Jewish history and thought, but mostly history. So I learned a lot from him about modern Judaism, meaning in the from the 15th century forward, how Judaism came to be in the modern day, throughout through all the way through World War I and II. That gave me an appreciation also of the monotheistic religions, um, how crucial they have been to the development of civilization, and the concept of human rights, and the concept of human autonomy, and human dignity, and the value of a human being. When you bring the concept of God as a parent, um, and that we are God's children, this is an enormously um, uh, empowering way of thinking about humanity in a world where there were only gods and rulers. There were many separate gods. They weren't our parents. They were leaders and things to be feared. Um, and there was always a separation between the leading class and the common person. So the monotheistic religions brought a different take that every person is entitled to the best that life has to offer, and we're all children of God. So um, I've been invested in the study of religion and spirituality from, I would say, mostly from the viewpoint of history and how it's affected civilization, but also on a more personal level from the viewpoint of what is the spiritual world and what is the human being, more metaphysical type questions. Um, and I continue to develop my spiritual practice in the sense of just remaining aware of what my spiritual life is like, and what is happening in the spiritual world, around me, in me, and the people around me. And through this, um, I discovered a teaching that really impacted me a lot, and eventually basically changed my whole life trajectory when I was about 20 years old. I met the Unification Movement, which is a group of people who are following the teaching of a Korean evangelist. I guess you could call him that. Um, he's really like a world leader on so many levels, and he's impacted history in a lot of ways, in ways people might not know. But he founded the Washington Times newspaper in Washington when they didn't have a conservative paper, and he did a lot of projects that were geared towards exposing communism and giving a response to communism and helping America stand uh, for its own freedom from communism. But also, he was instrumental in bringing down the Soviet Union. And there's kind of a hidden history there of his meetings with people there and projects that we did. So I was involved in projects involving the Board of Education in Russia and in other Eastern European countries, where we went and taught about unification philosophy. And we developed curriculums for their public schools, because when communism fell, they used to have a class called Komsomol, which is it's a it's educating to become a good citizen of the communist state, because the state is the center of everything. They taught, morality and obedience, and things like, if you don't work, you're not valuable. Um, Everything is material over there. So they needed a replacement, and we had our curriculums installed in a lot of their schools right after, in the early 90s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall. But his name is Reverend Sun Myung Moon. He has passed away now, but he was born in 1920. And I I might be speaking directly about his teachings on this channel, but for the most part, I'm more interested in delivering um, very personal experiences that have been helped and supported by Unification Principle. But I have another channel where I talk more about the principle directly for those who've read it and studied it. But if you want to study it, it's called The Divine Principle. It's about 300 pages. And it talks all about history and who human beings are and what's wrong with us and what we're trying to fix, and what the world um, can look like in the future. But it's a very rigorous and serious theological text, and like any breakthrough in theology or psychology, it's caused quite some waves. There is a marriage philosophy as well that goes with it, um, involving something called exchange marriage. So it supports the idea that we ought to marry across racial, cultural, financial, even religious boundaries. That families who have two separate streams of identity can flourish and contribute to a unified world. So I've done that. I have a Russian wife, and we have many, many friends who did the same thing. Um, so maybe I'll talk something about that in another video or on another channel. So my degree is in world religions. I would say with like a kind of a minor maybe in history. I had my certification to teach high school history in the United States, which I never used because of different things with my family. So I also am now a homeschool teacher, and I have one child. And let's see, we taught in Korea for 10 years. I did some mission work in Russia, and all throughout the States.
There aren't any job services available.
Thank you. I forget to turn my watch off. So that's, I think I'm going to leave it there. Much more to say on a more internal level in terms of, I would say, challenges that I've had in my personal life and how I've dealt with them. And maybe that's for a different video, but I just wanted to leave something here that could outline some of what I've done. Um, what else can I say? I don't know. I was the editor in chief of my college newspaper. Trying to just think of things that stick out. Yeah, graduated magna cum laude from college. I was a pretty good student. I like studying. Um, when I'm studying, what I really care about, I'm good at it. I think that's probably the case for everyone. Um, what else sticks out? I've had a whole bunch of different jobs. I had I would say like a crazy decade in my life where I was, um, I would say, kind of on the dark path of kind of, I guess, exploring. Gosh, how would I put it? Uh, I'll leave it for another video. But I'm not a stranger to, personal, having to how can I put this? Having to remediate my own psychology, my own um, desires, and so forth. So, and I've made a lot of strides in that area, and that's why I'm here today, because I think that I've come up across something that I think can be very helpful to people that are. Oh yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to say. It can help people that are kind of coming more from the atheistic worldview versus the religious one. So I feel like I've never really fully embraced either side. Um, but I have spent considerable time in atheist circles. I would say like I was raised in that and spent the first, maybe 15 years of my life in that environment. And then I have spent some time in a religious community of sorts. Um, I would say that I don't align strongly with either side right now. I think there are issues with both sides, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. I want to provide a path and a solution that might appeal to both sides, but doesn't really isn't contingent on either side, if that makes sense. Like you don't have to pick a side. You can just do what you need to do in your own life. And I'm interested in laying out that kind of path. Um, I have experienced considerable, I would say, suffering just from the fact that um, for religious people, I'm kind of an outlier, and I think that has been hard for some people. And then on the atheist side, I'm more of the spiritual type, which has caused, I think, some kinds of disbelief or discomfort among people that I know who may not enjoy that. So, I have long felt that we are missing an opportunity and that there's a wall between these two groups that really doesn't need to be there. So I'm here to be a bridge for that. We always like to tend our wounds, right? So the things that hurt us the most, sometimes we really want to, you know, pour our heart into solving that, and that's part of what I love. It's what I also love about my marriage. I love that I'm married to someone from a former communist country who has, you know, all of that kind of sense of things. And it's fun having a child, you know, who is also mapping out the you know the bridges between two worlds. So that's me. This is longer than I thought, and I didn't write it out, but I just wanted to be sincere and spontaneous. So that's what I've done here. Uh, yeah, I'll leave it there. I guess one other thing is I've done a lot of entry level jobs. So I did some tech support. I've done sales. I've done landscaping stuff. I've worked with mentally retarded people. I've worked, you know, done bookstores. I've done some legal. Worked in a legal office. Worked in a financial industry. I've never done anything like a little bit medical with the retarded adults, and yeah, I'm just into tech. I'm into music. I've been in a few bands. I've done some recording. What else? Yeah, I like some video games. I don't play much anymore, but I have enjoyed like Skyrim and Diablo and this latest one, which some of you might know, which the name escapes me right now. I just yeah, I don't think about it too much anymore. Um, but I really want to say what it is, and I just can't remember the name. I have to pause and come back to it here. Elden Ring. Elden Ring. Really, really interesting, fun game. Okay. Oh yeah, and I speak a little bit of Korean. I speak a little bit of Russian. I speak French pretty well. That was what I studied through school. Um, I guess the other thing is about kind of left and right. I am familiar with both sides. I would say most of my hometown people would be on the left, and most of my current friends would be more on the right. And I see, you know, problems on each side, and I think there is a middle path there as well, which we need. Um, so, yep, that's where I live, and that's who I am. I'm 56 years old, and I live in Florida, and I have a little dog named Buddy. All right, that's me. So, glad to meet you, and happy to answer any questions in the comments.